Welcome. The last few years, I've noticed a phenomenon that's come along, which I want to share with you, which is, I think the best way of doing that was in quite a memorable way, quite a something that'll kind of remind us all to follow a certain pattern of behaviour, perhaps, and help us implement these kinds of things and get a great result at the end. So, hence the slightly quirky approach to how I'm going to present this, but there is underlying it all. There's a definite message I'm trying to send. So to start off with, more than welcome to fill questions afterwards and on Twitter and everything. But it'd be great if you could turn your phones off and any interruptions later. Okay. My name's Mike Rawling. I've been doing UX type things since before it's called UX, early internet stuff, and so since then I've been consulting, designing, engineering, all sorts of stuff for mostly high traffic type sites or applications, which interest me. Means you have quite an impact on people's lives. Okay, where I'm working at the moment is Unruly Media. They're a startup of about barely call them a startup now. They're about 5 to 6 years old, possibly. And we're developing video technology for all sorts of purposes, for sharing, for advertising, and for analytics and so on and so forth. We're made up of a large number team, which is broken up into sort of 3 sub-teams. There's about 4 stupidly intelligent XP type developers. So we've got pairing, we've got quite iterations instead of sprints, and but I don't think it should affect the way the message behind this talk particularly. It's definitely drawn from years of doing Agile. So they've got varying levels of experience on working on the front end or user experience, mostly very technical. They probably call them sort of programmers or XP programmers, and one UX guy, which is me. Okay, so tonight what are we going to talk about? Right, so what the hell am I talking about? What's this? What is this zombie business? I'll give you some sort of field guide to recognising the problem, and also some tips as to how we can solve issues. Okay. Right, so what the hell are they? Okay, so there's various interpretations of zombies generally. If you haven't heard of these kinds of things before, or seen these zombie films, they are not as cute as little cats or kittens, as you can see here in direct comparison. People go very, very detailed about how they where they come from, what can create them. You can have biological zombies, supernatural zombies, chemical zombies from leaks underground, technological zombies where mistakes go, alien zombies where a green rock falls from the sky and turns someone into a mindless beast, and even agile zombies. They're doing some yoga. In history, they go back years, pre-Hollywood, definitely. There's signs of them in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Scandinavian, Japanese, and Hindu and Buddhist type texts. A lot of people think they're from. Most evidence seems to be that they're from Africa, and then in the West, I think we mostly encountered them for about 1929. A chap wrote about zombies in a book which inspired Hollywood, and a film called White Zombies. And since then, there have been an absolute glut of things going on, particularly most recently something called Walking Dead, which is a high-budget series that's been going on and on and Me being who I am, I couldn't help but make a word cloud. So the things that seemed to come across when I was doing research for this piece were they're undead, they're mindless, reanimated corpses, with a hunger for human flesh. And most people seem to agree that there is going to be some sort of apocalypse at some point. So let's find out. They can also be this. That's a zombie cocktail, probably. But mostly they're these. Okay, but so this is all a bit of fun, yeah, great. Imagination, just make believe from Hollywood. Right. Well, I didn't think so. I think there's an impending persona apocalypse in a lot of the teams that I work for, and certainly something we need to fight against. Okay, quick bit of audience participation. How many of you know actually what personas are? Have you heard them before? Come across them? What's that one? Maybe 50%, possibly. Okay, who here has created them? Have you been involved in creating them, or so little subset? Maybe about the same. Possibly. Okay, that's about 10 people, I think. And who here has actually talks to their personas? Do you find yourself chatting them? No? Okay, that's fine. Bear with me, there's nothing like madness. Do you ever feed them? Okay, well, this could be the problem. Okay, so what are personas? Well, I think we're probably less or greater familiar with the Agile principles, motivations behind it, and then less or greater experience. But user experience, techniques, the use of the design process was probably formulated not about the same time, I'd say, as some of the Agile discussions going on. And I think it would sought to solve some of the same problems. But certainly, from the UX point of view, generally the theory is to soak the whole design development process in user attributes, user information, and the way people are going to use your product, their behaviours, their kind of understandings and their perspective, and embodied in someone like me or your sort of, UX person. That would be I'm seeking to form a bridge between development stakeholders and the users themselves. It's been, I think, if you've sort of talked about this subject before, it has been polarised in arguments. So I've spoken to quite a few people who, with Agile backgrounds, who said, personas, they're terrible, they're not solving my problems, they're sort of fashion, they're just something that silly game that we play to try and imagine, why not just use our imagination directly? Well, I'd probably sit on the other side, because whenever I question those kind of comments, it's always come down to they've not been made correctly, they've not been created with any kind of basis in good formal process, which there is, and often they're just sort of made up from someone's head, the MDs or something. Okay, so as you can see, they can go wrong, they can become sick and a bit infected. So what am I talking about here? Okay. I found it useful to break it up into different types of zombies. Right, so there's the slow ones. The ones, I don't know if you've ever seen a zombie film before, they kind of shuffle along, completely brain-dead. So this is, I think, what you get if you maybe you've created them and you've put them up on the wall, or they're in a document somewhere on a hard drive, on the NAS, and no one's talking to them. They've left it, no one's using them, no one's using the process or doing anything with them. They're getting lonely, you haven't, and they're slowly dying. So, another reason why I think I'd call them zombies is because they're quite often they're referred to, but they're never fed, or they're kind of they stick up the wall, and you find they're out of date, and they're effectively making the team make decisions on out-of-date information, on false information that isn't really appropriate to the market. So, okay, there's fast ones. I've seen in 28 Days Later, a fabulously scary film, which And I think that represents the kind of things, if you're going too fast to listen to your personas, if you're deciding that you know better than the kind of information that you've got coming back from users, from feedback or your customer service people, it's really good to remember in that sort of situation, you are not your user. It's a mantra I tend to kind of bore people with constantly, make posters about and leave them in a trail in my wake. You're not your user, and also your MD isn't as well. I mean, it may have very educated guesses in it, but it's not going to replace good, solid, well-grounded personas. Okay, and they're super infectious. I've noticed super infectious ones as well, which they seem to be quite fun, quite quirky, really inspiring. But they don't have much basis in information. They're not. It's really important to keep it real and base these things on information, tangible information, primary evidence from different sources. I'll come on to that in a minute. Okay, so that's zombies. How far can we go with it? No, there's a bit more to it. There are other things as well, other problems we can come across. So there are, I would call something called ghost personas, which they have no substance, so there's nothing there. They're not based on anything at all. They're just made up by someone, sketched out on a sheet, stuck. Dr. Frankenstein personas. I've seen this a few times where people have a vague idea of who the users are, but it's based on some data they left in Google Analytics or some a chat they had with the head of customer service a few years ago. So the parts of these personas are kind of distributed all around. Vampire personas. They're afraid of the light of day. They can't. They don't hold up if you take them out and try and put them next to someone who might be an example of your personas. They don't match. They fade away. So much danger. I'm starting to sound like it's a very difficult thing to do. It's not. It shouldn't be. There aren't. Why do we even need them? Okay. Has anyone here ever had this conversation? And I would probably disbelieve you if no one puts their hand up. You've been discussing a product or a feature or something. It's quite tricky. You can't quite understand how users would use something, and someone sparks up and says, "If I was using this, I would do that." Has anyone ever heard that? Yeah. I mean, I think you could work in there for 6 months and hear it 6 times. Well, I think that's part of the problem, and I saw that over and over again until I came across the use personas and the way that they externalise that problem. So you start saying, I would do this, which it becomes very emotive. It's you own that idea, therefore you become. It can get arguments can get quite heated. Maybe you hold on to an argument when you shouldn't. You don't need to because you could kind of become defensive about it. Whereas if you externalised it, you're talking about Bob or Sophie or Jack rather than yourself, and it's a lot easier to be objective. Okay. Okay, done properly. The idea is to instill a sense of empathy in the team, so that they understand who the users are. They can instinctively make decisions. Maybe we make 10 or 15 decisions every day that may not need a whole team or a UX person to get involved. Maybe you're saying, where should I put this button? Or where, example would be, how important is this feature over that feature? If I make this architectural decision, what effect will it have on the user themselves? If you're armed with those sort of pieces of information, you can go a hell of a lot faster than having to go and discuss it, have a meeting or something. Okay. One thing I've in the last 2 years I've really experienced, and I didn't really think it was quite as powerful as that, but the process of creating personas can actually bring a consensus amongst all people who are involved and direct a company get them all working in the same direction, as opposed to Bob over here has one idea, Jack over here has another idea of what's needed. We're all across the company, so you may have someone in sales, someone in senior exec, and they're pulling in different directions, and it's an amazing way of kind of gathering that together, and sort of subconsciously or unconsciously getting people to sort of know what the problems are. Equally, I think in agile teams you can, certainly in my experience, be as a UX person, be the one person who is the coach or the person who is looked to for UX decisions, and that's quite tricky. You want to maximise and optimise your time as best as possible, but also companies don't. The UX is kind of a company-wide issue. There may be quite in my current company, the marketing department write the copy. There's a separate design team, and they're graphic designers. They know a little bit about user experience. They're really into it, but they're not really experts and not very experienced. So it's really useful to start spreading that knowledge out. Yeah, again, this is a better example actually. To use the classic illustration, this gets used in all sorts of places, but I think it's great for this situation. Again, people have a different perspective on who these users are. Customer service has a different idea than sales, and getting that kind of cohesive or integrated sort of understanding is really powerful. Okay, so all very well, wonderful, great, but how do we stop these things? How do we solve the problem? Well, I've put together a little apocalypse survival guide, which should help you address the problems. Right. I think if there's maybe half or 2/3 of this group haven't actually used personas before, then it's worth thinking about this for when you do come to it. But there's all sorts of resources and talks, presentations around how to start creating them. Perhaps get someone like me, speak to your nearest UX person, and get them to sort of to work on this, to create personas. But this is I think it's the best way of. Here are some tips anyway to kind of help solve them, but also when you're in progress, which is the thing I'm talking about. When they're in place, when you've created them already, it's important to remember these things. So we've got our ghost personas, which we support are a real problem, and we want to base it on good, qualitative and quantitative information. So they are you're getting information from maybe customer services again, but quite often they record their issues. They'll have a top 10, top 30, top 50 issues and answer to them. I mean, this is part of their job, quite often to script this stuff and make it a lot quicker and easier to answer questions. Try and find the primariest data or evidence you can. So interview users if you have access to them. Pull down data from the server logs. Talk to your developers. Google Analytics, great source. Always good. Okay. So we've got our vampires. How do we vanquish those? I think one of the problems we'll talk about with these is the skew or bias in the information you can bring in. So to use the customer service example again, quite often it's important to remember people are phoning up because they're a problem with the system. They're a self-selecting group. They're going to be miffed to start off with. So it's not going to give you the best feedback, or at least it's useful, but it's just important to keep in mind that that it's not going to be the most objective perhaps. Okay. On to our zombies. Right. Zombie deployed. Running persona workshops is one of the classic ways of constructing these, building personas, finding ways of mining that data. Once you've created some seed personas from various different sources, it's really worth getting the various different people together from the company and pulling out the kind of information that you need from the people who know these users. An effective workshop will often, you'll need all people who essentially interface with your users. So again, sales, possibly marketing, if there's quite a lot of conference type booth type stuff. Other examples might be customer service, possibly the founders of a company or CEO. But also the people who are going to use them, so the audience for these guys, developers or a developer from the team, the designer, the people who are going to consume this information needed to be able to design the product. There's one tip that I have come across, which is a little bit off on a tangent, but it's certainly it's really important when you're running these sessions to get the most honest answer out of people. The primary evidence, the right answer. Quite often, when you've got a more senior person in the room, it may affect how people answer the questions. They may either seek to agree more, or they may perhaps not speak up if they're going to disagree with someone. So it's quite a tricky thing. Sometimes I'll break them out and have a separate workshop with just the senior people. It's useful, and I've seen disagreements in the resulting examples, or certainly work to be done to kind of to bring those two different results from the two workshops together. Okay. Right. Yeah, it is particularly important to engage with these guys because they're the people, your sponsors, your stakeholders. They're going to be signing stuff off. They're going to be, if they don't buy into them, then the work is essentially, it's not helpful. It may be, it's only 50% helpful. It's not going to really have quite the impact that it could do. So, excuse me, having those guys actually sign off and decide a hierarchy of them. See, quite often you'll structure your personas in layers. You might have a primary one, most important, two secondaries, and so on. And that's kind of the area where they're quite important. Okay, so how do we address our Frankenstein's monsters? Within the engendered in the persona workshop, I would always follow on with something called affinity grouping, which is essentially a process with a facilitated process with the rest of the team to distill these into these bits of data and all the kind of the input they've given, slowly into down into more focused groups of stuff. You're not going to want more than, I'd say, between 3 and 7 personas themselves, and that's once you've got a good sort of group of them, a good feel. There's things that seem to make sense. Then perhaps thinking about their backstory as well. So literally imagining the kind of things they do all day. What is the day in the life of Bob, our primary persona, look like? What do they have for breakfast? What car do they drive? What's their mood going to be when they get into work? What are their pain points? Their goals? Those kind of things. Things that really make them happy and will solve their problems. Okay, so we created our personas, and what do we do then? Don't let them languish in a nav drive somewhere on a talk to them, stick them up on the wall, use them in estimation or in prioritisation meetings. One technique I tried recently, actually about a year ago, and it's been quite effective, has been to replace the kind of standard name. Quite often a user story will start with as a manager or as a this, as a that, quite a depersonalised person. Replace it with that persona name. So our primary persona at the moment of the project I'm working on is called Charlotte. So we say, as Charlotte, I want to say that. Okay, something that I work with really technical developers. I think they're the most technical people I've worked with. Really nerdy, great bunch, stupidly intelligent, and I'm not unnerdy, but these guys weren't quite buying into it, I should say. I think they're struggling perhaps with the concept that none of them come across user experience. So we tried some new ideas. So something that I hadn't seen before was these Moo stickers. I think you can go to moo.com. I'm sure there's other ones are available, but they'll send, if you print out the pictures of your personas, and all your personas should have a photo on. Stick them onto the cards themselves, so you have that direct connection as to who that person is, what they're doing, and what they're concerned. So it's a neat trick. It wasn't working too well. I think we like more flexibility in the kind of environment we're working in, and we were tearing up a lot of cards, going through lots of stickers. So I came across these amazing things, which are sticky grabs. Now, and it's a service that will take your Instagram photos and turn them into fridge magnets. And funny enough, in our office, we have all around the walls these big magnetic whiteboards, and that's where those are our walls. And we kind of stick our cards to them with magnetic things like that. And these are working really well. You can use them to hold the cards up. You can they're larger. They have a bit more impact, and they feel there's a bit more solidity to them. I can't describe quite why, but it's they're bendy and they're only 2 millimeters deep, but they're surprisingly impactful. But it's a neat trick, useful. Okay, and not long now. They are really embodiments of hypotheses. So in the way that a design is a hypothesis, the way that this is your best guess as to what will be the most successful way of presenting a feature to a user, what the click through of pages. They're all hypotheses that we think will work, and we put it out there, we release it, and we try to see whether it works. And if it doesn't, we try something else. It's the same with personas. So test them against people. Get out there, see if they stand up to the real world. Do they look like? Take them through their paces. Imagine them using the product. And see if they make sense. Yeah, and finally, never stop refining. It's like I liken Agile UX or Lean UX very much to what some believe is sort of the best Agile approach is each team, each company, each product needs a slightly different approach or self-organise itself, and I think that's the same way here. So take my ideas, try them out. If they don't work, find something that works for you. But hopefully this has been quite helpful. There you go. If anyone wants to take the same with them, I'll print one out for them and send it to them, or tweet it to them. I'll have to quote or give reference to some of the guys here because I did invent personas. There's a famous chap called Alan Cooper who's written a book called About Face. It's in version 3 at the moment. Mike Kuniaski famously did some really good work. He wrote an awesome book, which is a great introduction to user experience called Observing the User Experience, and another book called Persona Lifecycle. And also a great respect to a chap in Berlin called Tom Allison who spoke about the idea of resolving personas about a year ago in a slightly different context, but it certainly sparked my imagination. So, fair play to him. All right.